Avoiding distraction in the M&A process. During any process of selling or exiting a company, it's really important for the company, to the extent possible, to sprint through the finish line. And what we mean by that is we want all of the numbers to be moving in the right direction. We want the company to be firing on all cylinders. We really want the performance of the company during the process of seeking and procuring an exit or sale to be as optimal as possible, because that creates the momentum of the ultimate dialogues that you'll have with prospective acquirers, or in the situations of financing capital providers. And so if you think there are some issues that can come up along the way, it happens from time to time, and if the company's performance is diminished to some degree, it will exacerbate those issues. While to the contrary, if an issue comes up or an item that needs to be discussed comes up and the company's performance is just growing and moving in the right direction throughout it, it mitigates that, or it minimizes the impact that may have on the overall dialogue. Therefore, to optimize the probability that the company will be able to sprint through that finish line, it's important for the owners, the executives of the business, to be able to remain focused on the business while this process is being run in parallel. We want to talk about 3 important considerations today in the effort to avoid any distractions from arising during the M&A, or for that matter, capital sourcing process. And so the first of these is knowing which parties to reach out to. There's firms out there that will gather some information and spew it out to the world, and 1,000 people will come back and they'll have 1,000 questions, and it will create a very cumbersome and very inefficient process of kind of separating that wheat from the chaff, or as a mentor of mine once said, separating the prospects from the suspects. And so it's better and much more efficient to prospectively reach out to potentially interested parties after the research has already been done in many ways. And so knowing that all of these parties have at least a high confidence interval from our internal research of having a bona fide interest in the particular opportunity, and therefore the conversations are much more high probability, it yields better results, and implicitly less distractions. The second consideration is the sharing of information. And so obviously during the process of selling a business or securing capital for a business, there's a lot of information that needs to be shared. But that doesn't mean it all needs to be shared at once. And so knowing what information can be shared kind of right out of the gate to gauge preliminary interest, typically on an anonymous basis, the way we like to do it. And then once NDAs are signed, what level of information is shared thereafter, what information is shared before indications of interest, letters of intent, and then during formal diligence. But at each juncture, if left to their devices, there are acquirers or capital providers that will just ask a perpetual amount of questions and continue to, not pejoratively saying, but kick the tires of a situation. So it's important to know how much information should be shared at each stage, and therefore leading into our last consideration, what the process and the pacing and the sequencing of the different cutoffs, contingencies, and deadlines should be. And so by virtue of knowing who to reach out to, what information to share at which junctures, and finally what the timing of each phase of the exercise and of the discussions are, what are the contingencies, what are the deadlines, at what point do we want follow-up questions, at what point do we want to provide answers to those follow-up questions, at what point do we want indications of interest, do we want letters of intent, do we want best and final offers for a particular situation. And then going into the diligence process with that one counterparty, there's always going to be a few things that have not been entirely ironed out at the LOI mark, and how do you want to sequence those conversations, and at what information, again, do you want to share prior to having the last and final kind of T's crossed and I's dotted, leading into the final confirmatory items of the diligence process. Avoiding distractions in the M&A or capital sourcing process. And we wanted to highlighting 3 main considerations today: who you're reaching out to, what information is being shared and when, and broadly the sequencing, cadence, or phasing of the overall process. And so that's the thought for today. Hope the week's going well for everyone. Keep pushing forward. God bless. We'll see you everyone next time.